Mike's good? Okay, fantastic. It's great to see this crowd. And even nicer that the weather's cooperating today. We're quite thankful for that. My name is Christina Mora, and I'm professor of sociology and the co-director of the Institute of Governmental Studies alongside Professor Eric Schickler. It is my pleasure to welcome you all here today for an exciting discussion about women leaders and the future of California. Indeed, in the midst of historic partisanship, geopolitical upheaval, and the remnants of a once-in-a-generation pandemic, California's leaders today face the challenge of guiding one of the globe's most influential cultural and economic regions towards a brighter future. At the center of this effort lie many unanswered questions about the Golden State's ability to stand at the forefront on major issues like reproductive rights, climate change, and immigration. What role, then, will women, including politically engaged women of color, play in shaping this future? How can these leaders help to continue the state's path women leaders face as they lead institutions with a steadfast public mission and a commitment to breaking down barriers and creating opportunity for all? Chancellor Chris.
I thank you, Christina. I'm so delighted to welcome you here to this program on the second day of Women's History Month. Women's History Month always calls to mind reflections on my own history as a woman, particularly in relationship to feminism. I was a young woman in the 1960s and 1970s during the second wave of feminism. And I was extremely active in feminism at the time. And at that same time, I also moved to California. I arrived in California in 1970. So the two have been always connected in my mind. And as a young woman in the 1970s, I so much wished for women leaders in politics. Eric Schickler helped me with some statistics just a minute ago. In 1970, there were 11 women in the US Congress. There wasn't yet a woman candidate for president. That was Shirley Chisholm, I don't know what year. And Geraldine Ferrara was the first woman candidate for vice president. So thinking back over those years makes me so happy to be able to vote for so many women on the ballot. That you can have a program like this, Women Leaders and the Future of California, suggests how much things have changed. We now have a woman vice president, and we have 153 women in the US Congress, quite a leap up from 11. So I am delighted to, that this program seems so wonderful. Two of the women I've voted for many times on the agenda, Eleni Kounalakis and Betty Yee. I don't think I've ever voted for you, Holly Mitchell. But I am really, really thrilled that this program about the future of California features women leaders as well it should. So welcome.
Thank you for those remarks. Now let me introduce our three panelists who are here with us today. First, we have Lieutenant Governor, who today is Acting Governor, Eleni Kounalakis. A native Californian, she was sworn in as the 50th Lieutenant Governor of California by Governor Gavin Newsom on January 7, 2019. She was the first woman to hold this position. From 2010 to 2013, Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis served as President Barack Obama's ambassador to the Republic of Hungary, making her one of the youngest to serve in such a role. In 2014, Governor Jerry Brown appointed Kounalakis to chair the California Advisory Council for International Trade and Investment, and she served as a Virtua Fellow at the U.S. Department of State. Prior to her service, Lieutenant Governor was president of one of California's most respected housing development firms, where she worked for 18 years. Eleni graduated from Dartmouth College in 1989 and earned her master's in business administration from none other than Cal Berkeley. Yes. So why don't you come up and take a seat here as yes.
Okay.
Next, we have Supervisor Holly Mitchell from the LA County Board of Supervisors. Currently serves, she was appointed and served as the chair of the LA County Board of Supervisors from December 21 to December 2022. As the daughter of parents who were public service and a third-generation Angelino, Mitchell represents 2 million residents of LA County's 2nd District. Within her first year as supervisor, Mitchell passed the landmark county-wide Guaranteed Universal Income Program, made LA County the first in the nation to phase out urban oil drilling, and has strengthened the county's ability to quickly respond to mental health crises among unhoused residents. Before serving on the Board of Supervisors, Mitchell served for a decade in the California State Legislature as representative for the 54th Assembly District and the 30th Senate District. While there, she became the first African American to serve as the chair of the Senate Budget and Fiscal Review Committee. Supervisor Mitchell was awarded an honorary doctorate degree of Humane Letters from Charles Drew University and is a proud UC Riverside Highlander. Thank you so much. Why don't you come up and take a seat? And we are also fortunate to have with us today former State Controller Betty Yee. State Controller Yee was elected in November 2014 following 2 terms of service on the California Board of Equalization. Re-elected for a second term as controller in 2018, Ms. Yee was only the 10th woman in California history to be elected to statewide office. As Chief Fiscal Officer of the world's 5th largest economy, State Controller Yee chaired the Franchise Tax Board and served as a member of CalPERS and CalSTRS Board. As chair of the State Lands Commission, Betty provided stewardship of public trust lands, waterway, and marine resources through economic development, protection, preservation, and restoration consistent with the state's environmental needs. A native of San Francisco, Ms. Yee has more than 35 years of experience in public service, specializing in state and local finance and tax policy. She is a proud Golden Bear alumni and also holds a JD from Golden Gate University. Thank you so much. Why don't you join us? And before we begin, I'd just like to remind our audience that everyone has been given white note cards for you to jot down any questions you might have for our panelists during the open Q&A session. All right. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm going to move there. I think this mic is working. All right, great. Thank you so much for being with us. It's so great to have this panel here today. And I guess I wanted to start with a broad question, and we can start with the Lieutenant Governor and move to my left. What do you think right now are the biggest challenges and opportunities facing California right now, but also thinking forward over the next decade or so?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It is always great to be back on campus as a Bear. And what a privilege to have Chancellor Christ here and her own extraordinary groundbreaking leadership for women, and to be here with these incredible colleagues all together on a Friday afternoon. So you start right up at the top.
It feels like Friday, though.
Thursday afternoon. Okay. Well,
We've got happy hour afterwards if you want to make it a Friday.
All right. So on a beautiful Thursday afternoon. So jumping right into the question of the biggest challenges of our state. Honestly, I think that they're relatively well established. I think that we know that income inequality is a big challenge for the state of California. We are a state of 39 million people, the largest state in terms of population. We are now having overtaken Germany, we believe, the 4th largest economy in the world if we were a country. We have this extraordinary distinction, which I think is probably one of our greatest strengths, which is that we are a majority-minority democracy. So no single ethnic group has a majority in the state of California. And in fact, we are probably the largest majority-minority democracy in the world. But when we think about the challenges ahead, there is no question that the cost of living here is very high. Wages have not come anywhere near close to keeping up with the cost of living in our state, driven largely by housing prices. And so because we have a value here, which I think when you look at the profile of our elected officials, 75% of our legislature is held by Democrats. The seats are held by Democrats. We have a very clear priority, which is we're going to do everything we can to take care of the people who live here and make sure that they have access and opportunity. And so when you see this gap of income inequality, and when you see people struggling every day to put a roof over their family's head and food on the table, you realize I think this is really going to drive a lot of policy and a lot of the challenges that we have in front of us. There are other things, I'm sure, that the Controller Emerita will talk about water issues. Certainly, it was, drought and now a lot of snowpack. And generally speaking, we are so forward-leaning in the world when it comes to combating climate change. But the impacts of climate change, we're feeling very acutely with 8 of the 10 largest, most catastrophic wildfires in our history happening in the last 10 years. And then, of course, drought and what that does to agriculture and families turning on their spigots. So I would say probably income inequality and then combating the impacts of climate change are 2 of the biggest, but I could draw up a pretty long list.
Yes, you could. And Supervisor Mitchell?
I would say ditto. I would add housing. What we build, for whom, and where. Walking over today, I was learning about some of the current legal battles in terms of the vision to build housing in, is it Freedom Park?
People's Park.
People's Park. And how that stalled and why. And there are examples just like that all over the state. I am a mother. He's 22, that's why I made that face. I bet he's known since he was born. And he just begins to cringe when he sees people approach me at Costco and the gas station, because they do, pointing their finger, what are you going to do about the unhoused? Wow. And I'm like, well, my father used to say, when you point, 3 fingers are pointing back at you. And so the issue is, how are all of us, whether you're elected or not, on an individual basis, who among us are willing to have the look of your own block to change? To allow us to build densely, to allow us to build in close proximity to public transportation. There was a bill when I was in the state legislature that was my first time in a decade there, where my constituents in Hancock Park and South LA wrote the same form letter. Don't change the charm of my single family home neighborhood.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, this is fascinating.
Wow.
Because these 2 groups of people don't have a lot in common. But, so what we build, for whom and where. Whether it's building for our unhoused, whether it's building for our family, friends, and neighbors who are experiencing substance use disorder or experiencing in the middle of a mental health crisis, whether it's for the soon-to-be graduates here who get those jobs and can't afford or find a place to live, if it's for that mother who's escaping domestic violence with her kids, whether it's for that veteran, whether it's for the largest new population of people entering homelessness in LA County, people over 55.
My goodness.
Whether it's for our seniors, what we build for whom and where. And to piggyback on your comment about income disparity, I think we also have to dig a little deeper and go back in time and realize how we got there, because it wasn't accidental. It's not because my foremothers and forefathers didn't work as hard as yours or Betty's. It was systemic racism, often validated by government, that prevented equal opportunity. When we talk about housing and we look at home ownership and we look at the role redlining played, limiting places where people could buy homes, that has had a direct impact on multi-generational wealth building.
Yeah.
Some students who are attending here whose parents could take a second mortgage out on that house to allow them to attend university. If you don't have the property to take the second mortgage out, how do you don't have the benefit of multi-generational wealth? And the issue of what we build, for whom and where.
Wow. Thank you.
Controller, yes.
So ditto and ditto. But I want to just look under the hood a little bit more, because Supervisor Mitchell just hit a nerve with acknowledging that so much of what we are confronting today is not by accident, and that this is very much a part of our history, a part of this nation's history. And to me, and as Lieutenant Governor really observed, I do think it is the economy and climate front and center. I mean, we're seeing the impacts just so clearly every day, non-concentrated in any one part of the state now, but really everywhere in the state. The fact that we are looking at the housing and homelessness crisis here in California, probably one of the growing humanitarian crises here in our state. I think it is time to look at and recognize all of the unaddressed trauma that so many communities in our state are facing. And some of this is systemic and historic and has spanned over a long period of time. But if there's anything that I think we have all emerged from the pandemic really understanding, and that is just how unequal things were. We knew where the hardest impacts were with the pandemic.
Yeah.
This is not going to be the last pandemic we experience, by the way, and that climate change will bring us other experiences like that. And so to look at, I think, the roles and responsibilities. Whose responsibility is it to deal with the homelessness issue? Whose responsibility is it to deal with this historic, systemic, racism that we're still encountering in every part of our state, and frankly, a very rich history of it right here in Berkeley. And as I think about that, it does really reveal to me, especially as we're thinking about here in California, we have some of the strongest gun safety laws, and yet we have mass shootings in different parts of our state. And the fact that people are looking to violence as a way to deal with social isolation, to deal with their mental challenges, to deal with whatever is really plaguing them. And so I do think there is this one aspect that we have to really acknowledge, because frankly we can kind of solve these other issues. But if those underlying issues of just the trauma that so many of our communities have been carrying for so long, if that isn't addressed, I'm not so sure that we're going to be making the progress that we need to make in terms of moving California to be an inclusive state and economy, and also one that is just where we can actually talk about wealth being passed on from generation to generation.
Well, that's a lot. There are many, many challenges ahead, and it reminds me of, I think a few years ago, The Economist once labeled California both the richest and poorest state in the nation.
Exactly.
And we know that this is a racialized phenomenon. We know that there are very real differences in the way we're thinking about this. And as diversity has increased, so has income inequality. And so this is unique challenges to California that are unlike anywhere else in the nation.
That article acknowledged that California had the highest child poverty rate in
Yes.
the nation.
Yes.
And as a Californian, as a California policymaker, we look to other states, Mississippi, Alabama,
West Virginia.
exactly, right, Appalachia, exactly. But we don't, it's
Right.
California.
It's very unique. It's the bastion of extreme wealth and also the place of highest child poverty rates in given
Exactly.
years. Or if we think of gun violence, different California cities from across the Central Coast to the Central Valley to the LA region have been some of the unsafest places in California. So given all of these challenges, what opportunities are there for women leaders? We've heard many of you have sat on sort of only the 10th or the 1st or have been trailblazers in these places. What opportunities are for women leaders to meet these challenges and lead us?
You want to mix it up? Or
Just not that. Well, let's go with Betty.
Well, first, let me just say I am thrilled that we've moved beyond the 10th. We have an 11th, a 12th, a 13th, and growing, so that is fantastic. So I think a couple things. One is, in so many ways, across so many of our experiences each day, I feel like, the Band-Aid that's been the fix to try to address these issues have all been ripped off. And so I would say one of the opportunities is I don't know of anyone who hasn't experienced either in family and community just the crisis of mental health that is really plaguing so many of our communities in the state. And so I think awareness is an opportunity to actually acknowledge that exists in our communities, to really lean into what the specific needs are for different communities. And I think for women especially, these are issues that we've had to deal with in a very informal way for a long time. Whether we're heading up households, whether we're parents, whether we're community leaders. And it is really, I think, a great phenomenon that we have more women being elected into office and bringing those experiences to really shape the policies that need to be in place. And so I'm hopeful. I think all of us are optimists at heart. But I think just doing everything we can to elevate the awareness, to really look at how we just invite these voices to be a part of the solution. I think one of the things that I certainly pride women with doing is that it's this concept of proximate leadership. Those who are closest to the issues are probably the best at identifying the solutions to them. And I think women recognize that inherently. And so I'm very hopeful about just the opportunities that we can have these very frank discussions and policy discussions about what we have to do. And to Supervisor Mitchell's point, the role of government in this. I have to say, and I'll just share this story because it's something that I carry with me every single day, having been in public service for over 38 years. After the murder of George Floyd, I remember just checking in with members of my staff team because there was just a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, and people bring it to the workplace. You want to be sure that people are feeling supported with what they're feeling. And I remember a number of my team members saying to me, we really appreciate your check-in, but you've been part of the problem. You've been part of a system that has actually made this elevate to be the crisis that it is today. And I live with that. And I own that. And I do believe it. Because when you think about just all the inequities that we're living with today, when you think about the fact that we're still talking about the Black American experience of where intergenerational wealth is still something very, very foreign, where so many rights were won, but the economic rights never followed. This is history that has to be front and center to inform the work that we do. And I think, for us to even have this conversation today and to acknowledge that that's what we have to confront is the first step.
I think I had two life experiences that are really germane, I think, to the core of the question. How do we attract women, into public office? And one was leading a large child development agency in Sacramento, sitting in a budget hearing where they were proposing to cut $1 billion out of subsidized child care. And I looked at the panel, and there was not a woman on the budget subcommittee. And it hit me, I don't know that I've had that feeling before or since. It was like a wave literally washed over me where I thought, they have no idea the ramifications of the decision they're about to make. Zero. And I'm not a desk pounding, get mad person, but I got desk pounding mad. And in that moment decided, I'll be damned, I have to run for office. Like literally. So, second experience, I've now announced for assembly, I'm running. I'm in the dentist's office and pick up some random magazine, as we all do. And it was an article written by a former Utah legislator that talked about the relevance of her ordinary life experience as she became an elected official. And I thought, that's absolutely right. That I think as women, the Center for the American Woman in Politics at Rutgers has done research for years.
Yeah.
We have to be asked 7 times, blah, 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 blah. That we'll start local. We typically start at the school districts because our kids are in school and we get mad about something. That we don't wake up like some people and say, I think I'll run for president with no experience in serving a public office. Women just don't tend to do that. We have to be asked and cajoled. And I thought, and that's the missing piece. We don't value our ordinary life experiences and understand how relevant and germane that is to policymaking. We, in our various positions, have made decisions every day that impact your ordinary life experience. And so I think when women understand that and understand whatever your experience, your academic experience, your profession is, there is something you can bring to the policy-making setting that's ordinary. It's about a part of your life that can have amazing influence in the output from elected bodies. That's why women must run.
And in California, they do. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you are one of the 5 supervisors of Los Angeles County,
Yes.
all women.
All women.
All women.
Which is pretty incredible. Pretty incredible.
Yes.
The California legislature, when I was elected the first time in 2018, was about 27% women.
Oh my gosh.
Today, just about 4 years later in terms of the cycle, 4 years later, we are now 42% of the California legislature is women. Really remarkable. 10% higher than it's ever been before. So we're making progress, and what we know, and you mentioned Rutgers, there's a lot of research now, really quantified, detailed research, including research right out of here of UC Berkeley, where several scholars took data that was produced by Morgan Stanley that had to do with women on corporate boards. And that's your research here at Berkeley that said that when you look at companies that have women on corporate boards and in their leadership, they are more likely to be performing well on their ESG goals, right? Their environmental, social, and governance goals, that they'll have higher performance on those, directly correlated to the number of women on the boards and in the C-suite. That's just true now. What we also know, and I used to work in the federal government. I was a United States ambassador in Budapest, Hungary, and Hillary Clinton used to say, if you want to know how a country is doing, look at how the women are doing. But that also has been quantified, and in fact, when you look at the percentage of women internationally who serve in parliaments and serve in higher office, you can directly correlate that to the GDP of the country. So this is now just true. And I think that if you go back to your first question when we were all kind of depressing ourselves up here about the challenges that we have ahead, you actually can start look at progress and the kinds of things. I mean, your example was fantastic. I've got to tell you, it's not, by the way, just that when the women are sitting in the legislature that they advance policies that help families. It's the men start to advance them too, right? So, for instance, we, during the pandemic, had 2 years, the last 2 years of major budget surpluses. Some of those funds went to turning all school lunches in our schools into being available for all students.
Yeah.
I just today was in Oakland. I was in Oakland today, and today is Read a Book Day,
Yes,
right?
Read Across America.
I got
Yes.
to go read
That's
to
so
these
fun.
marvelous, marvelous kids and just watch them soak it up. And I went into the cafeteria, and they were telling me, you know, we had to differentiate between our little kids, first, second, third grade. We had to differentiate who gets a school lunch, who gets a partial school lunch, who gets a breakfast.
Yeah.
And she said, now everybody eats.
Nice.
You know, it is marvelous. And I remember, you know, Betty mentioned she's been in public office for 30 years. I have been in public office for 4.5 years. This is the first thing I ever ran for. And it has been incredible to learn about all of the various elements that make up the state of California. But I was amazed when I learned that the Los Angeles Unified School District, which is the largest in the country, right on the website, you open up the website, if it's still there, first thing it says, 80% of our students live at or below the poverty line.
Yes.
Right? So when you talk about the challenges of the state, you know, we would be here all day. But then you also talk about some of the solutions, like everybody gets a free lunch or Prop 98 that has helped to really dramatically increase school spending. And then you add to that more and more women serving in office. All of this comes together to paint a picture that the challenges that we have are not beyond our ability to address them.
Yes. That's true.
Thank you.
That's true. Couldn't agree more.
By the way, there's also another year of school, right? So now we've got transitional kindergarten that's being
Oh,
phased
yes.
in also as a result. So good stuff.
This makes me think maybe for the supervisor and state controller, what things are exciting you right now? Like, given we did talk about the challenges that are ahead, and the acting governor told us about sort of what's exciting her, what sort of, today, or what sort of places are you seeing a lot of light in and sort of excitement around?
No, you know, I think there's actually a lot of excitement around, well, we just, the Lieutenant Governor was talking about climate change, and of course, with these storms, we are reading today that half of California is out of drought condition, but hopefully we haven't forgotten that we still need to make some progress with respect to our water resources. But what excites me is the fact that everyone has felt some impact or another with respect to the effects of climate change. And I actually have a lot of hope that as we look at how we address it, whether it's on the energy side, the water side, you know, the nature-based side, that we are going to all be architects of an economy that actually works for everyone. And that what we're going to do is to bring the experiences of different communities to inform just what these policies need to look like. I hope that a lot of our investments in climate are going to be, and I have to actually just really applaud President Biden and Vice President Harris for the historic climate investment in the infrastructure bill, because this is going to be a game changer. And it's going to be a game changer, particularly if there is a focus on our frontline communities that have been bearing the biggest impacts. And when I think about just how we're going to do that, whether it's with the greenhouse gas fund, or gas emissions fund, reduction fund, a lot of that is going to be about how we help communities build resilience, but more importantly, economies that are sustainable to them. And so that's exciting to me. It's almost like you're giving a blank slate to just talk about what's going to work in your community to help build resilience, and also to build an economy that will provide opportunities for everyone there. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's great.
the strange kind of twisted silver lining in the COVID cloud is really once in a generation federal dollars are available for local governments. You know, my mother was a social worker in South LA in Watts in the early 60s when, you know, President Johnson declared a war on poverty. So I grew up experiencing how government could meet the needs of people where they are. And she was a brilliant, really ahead of her time young social worker who was writing grants and coming up with innovative programs to hire the women on her upper caseload, that kind of thing. And I think about kind of how the pendulum has swung over my time as an elected and even before, and I'm at that point in history again, where there's unprecedented resources that allow us to fund creative programs that have been researched, that we know work. We just haven't had the resources to do it. So you heard in my introduction this concept of guaranteed basic income, not a new concept. Dr. King included it in his poverty alleviation platform that he'd begun to build before he was taken from us. Nixon had a guaranteed income proposal. And so it will allow us to shift our thinking about blaming poor people for the conditions in which they're in. It will allow, my goal, my secret goal, is that it will shift our thinking about how government administers entitlement programs. Entitlement programs currently, you know, Medi-Cal, CalWORK, Section 8. You know, if all of you in this room had to look at those applications and jump through the hoops that government requires poor people to jump through to receive subsistence support, you'd be shocked at the questions we ask people.
Yes.
And the frequency with which we ask them to validate that they're still poor.
The invasiveness.
The invasiveness. And my hope is that we can have a new way of thinking. You know, there was a time in government, pre-Social Security, pre-Medicare, and we, you know, wouldn't have imagined that we would get to a point where we would make those programs available. So my secret dream is that we'll think differently about the role in which government supports families, that we value all work and all workers. And I think that that's really potentially on the horizon. Because of this influx of federal dollars, it's created pilots and opportunities for us to pilot these programs, test them, and hopefully show value. So maybe we change the way in which government provides services.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I see the commonalities around sort of thinking about income inequality by thinking about the way we think about poverty and who's entitled to what and how this is even all tied into sort of the outfall, the way we think about the environment and the pandemic and things together. Yeah, great. I want to shift a little bit and put a spotlight on IGS, the Institute of Governmental Studies, and the research that we do here. For the past few years, we've conducted a poll of California voters, and there's a sort of suite of findings that are consistent that we find here in California, but also mirror national trends. One is sort of the increase in government cynicism over the last few decades. The sort of Californians now increasingly think that democracy is in crisis. And of course, sort of the incredible rise in political polarization across the nation, but also in many parts of California, which many sort of national, but even state and local lawmakers feel is a sort of a new challenge, sort of something that we need to think about. How are fellow citizens thinking about, can democracy work, and can democracy work under these circumstances? And I wondered if you all had any thoughts about this, you know, especially the sort of as public servants and sort of in a time in which, you know, trust in government is at an all-time low.
So I think that any conversation like this, there has to be a recognition that we are in the middle of what some people call the fourth industrial revolution. That the change in all of our lives, in the way that we experience life, has shifted with the internet and, of course, everyday lives with social media. And so there's no question in my mind that a big part of the reason why democracy is struggling right now, not just in the United States, but around the world, is because of these wild swings in public opinion and the prevalence of misinformation and disinformation propagated here at home, pushed on us by adversaries around the world, which happens, and that we have to look at how we are going to continue to operate as democracies, which is at its root self-governance, right? We get together and figure out a way to govern ourselves through the election of representatives like the three of us here. But the circumstances have just changed so much, with newspapers being, gone as we knew them when I was young, with the kind of, Chat GPT and all of the deep fakes and all the bots and and even just the consolidation of information with this whole recent, Twitter situation, right? So I think that's really a big part of what is challenging our democracy right now. But I got to tell you, I'm Greek, and the Greeks had an imperfect and incomplete democracy 2,500 years ago, and the United States is, with all of our faults and all of our original sins and all of our steps backward as we've stepped forward, it is still the world's oldest and most successful democracy. So it's up to us. It
Absolutely.
is always up to us that we're going to decide that we are going to continue to figure out, to put our shoulder to the plow, to figure out how are we going to deal with all the challenges we've been talking about, all the challenges with how people communicate, and still figure out how our system of self-governance is going to work. And to me, the most important piece of it, which is why, as the only person, I'm very proud of this, who sits on all three boards of public higher education in the state of California, the CSU, the UC, and the Community College Board, I look to the next generation. And I tell them, learn about democracy, learn about government. Do not disparage the very system that empowers you. I mean, disparage it. We're at Berkeley. Disparage it. But then do something about it and get involved and be committed and be part of the solution.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Thank you. Holly?
Only thing I would add is, I get so irritated, by the complainers and the whiners. When I look at my own community I represent, I'm like, we rely on government services the most. How dare you suggest that you don't have a responsibility to be engaged and understand and defend it? We just don't have you don't get the privilege of saying, oh, politics is dirty, da-da-da. I'm sorry, you don't have that privilege. You have a responsibility to lean in and do the hard work to figure it out. We have a responsibility to be engaged in elections. You have a responsibility, particularly those who look to government every day to help us from keeping the bottom from falling out. Betty and I have long work history. We worked for a sitting member of the state Senate, and election day, people would call and just ask, who am I supposed to vote for? It is not my job to make that decision easy for you. It's not my job to make that decision easy for you. Is it hard? Yes. Do you have to go to multiple sites? But you need to figure that out for you. Because there's too much at risk if you don't. I have a former sitting colleague who used to say, don't call me on Wednesday, complaining about what services have not been available to you if you didn't vote on Tuesday. And so, so clearly I'm not the one to ask the question to answer to the world, because it's just like, I don't know what to tell you. Like Nike, just do it. Because when we consider the alternative, it's not pretty. Look around the world for too many examples.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I would just add, I think all of us, as Supervisor Mitchell spoke about, have a responsibility to do everything we can to make sure that our democracy stays intact. And I think we as elected officials have an added responsibility of being sure that the institutions of democracy remain strong. And by that I mean, that government, we are here to deliver. And that it's not just enough to pass bills, it's not just enough to provide funding, but we are here to deliver, to be sure that we are making an impact in people's lives. It's also, I was struck by...
Betty Yee is really good at that, by the way. She's really good at delivering.
I agree.
But it's also, I was struck by a poll, the Gallup poll that came out during the pandemic about just how the public was feeling about their institutions of government. So from their federal government to local governments to law enforcement to healthcare facilities to all of that. And certainly during the pandemic, I mean, people were just so grateful that our healthcare providers were there. They were doing everything they could to keep us healthy and safe. And looking at government really responding to a crisis, all of us had to pivot really quickly during the pandemic, not only just to ensure the safety of our teams, but of everyone we serve. And then looking at law enforcement, obviously the accountability for some of what we've been seeing and reading about relative to the acts of those who are law enforcement personnel. The accountability needs to be there, but certainly the confidence in law enforcement had started to wane significantly. And I raise this because the one area that actually did not change over time in terms of a decline in how people felt about an institution of democracy was the labor movement and workers. And which I found just fascinating, one, because I think we all experienced what that meant in terms of either a family member, a neighbor, people in our communities, and what the pandemic impacts were in terms of work. But also, it gave me some hope that as we look at how this economy is going to shift, whether it's the necessary shift because we are in this fourth industrial revolution, whether it's the necessary shift in terms of how we're going to build an economy that will be based on clean energy and really utilizing our resources well. But the idea that workers are going to be kind of potentially at the heart of how we continue to look at democracy staying strong really gave me a lot of hope. Gave me a lot of hope. And so I think that's kind of our added responsibility as elected officials is, where are those opportunities to really just, give a lift to those institutions that are going to be there as people are facing crises and that we can help just people overcome just so many things that are coming at them, whether it is income inequality, the impacts of climate change, just all the things that we know are going to take longer term solutions, but at the same time, we know that if we can just uplift our workers who are trying to do this work, that we're going to get there.
Great.
Powerful.
So I've got audience member cards. These are wild card questions, and we'll start with a question from one of our students, Yvette Hernandez, who's in the audience. Hi. Who asks, how do you work through advocating for important change, things like housing, health, education, that's often polarized? How do you do it? What forms of strength and support do you draw on, I guess, I imagine?
Well, I had a birthday 2 years ago and went and lost my mind and went and got a tattoo that says courage.
Wow.
And it's intentionally facing outward kind of as my shield, right? And I think that we just have to have courage. And to understand that sometimes it's the long game. before running for public office, I wouldn't have described myself as an incrementalist. But first couple of years in the legislature, I understood, okay, I didn't get it this time. I have to keep coming back. I keep coming back, keep coming back. And making the decisions. Do I compromise to get it this year? Do I not? Do I bring it back full throttle next year? And I think it's just having that will, that grit, that belief and understanding that whatever the policy is, you're bringing it forward for all the right reasons, and you just kind of lean in. Sometimes that can be isolating. Sometimes that can put you at odds with allies. Sometimes it helps bring new allies to the table. And you have to be open and ready for all of those options. If you are advocating for what you believe, the people you represent fundamentally need, and from my perspective, deserve.
That's fantastic.
You know, I would say really fundamentally, we have to stay informed. I used to always think, you know, I was former Governor Davis's budget director when he was in office, and I used to think, who am I in Sacramento to really understand, you know, what the needs are in various parts of the state? And I think for all of us, as we travel the state to really understand, you know, just what our policy actions mean to the lives of different communities in California, staying informed is really, really important. We are in the diverse state in this nation.
Yeah.
And we know there is no one-size-fits-all to many of our challenges. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to really understand, you know, just what is it that is going to have the greatest impact and benefit to communities around the state. And so staying informed, the best way, boots on the ground in those communities, really bringing ourselves to really hear the voices that are experiencing some of the most dire experiences of these challenges, and to constantly go back. Part of the accountability aspect of this is to be sure that we are making progress, that it's not over and done because they've gotten a budget augmentation or that we've had a major initiative, but it's this takes time. And so the accountability aspect, I think, is really important.
That is very good advice. Very good advice. Very good advice, very good advice. And I can't add to that, so I'm not going to try, but I will tell you a story from when I was working in the private sector, and I worked very closely with my father, who came to the United States alone as an immigrant from Greece when he was 14 when he left, 15 when he got to California. He worked as a farm worker in the Central Valley, made his way up to Sacramento, went to Sac State, worked as a waiter in the governor's mansion.
Wow.
And worked his way through school, started a business, and we were in housing. I was in housing with him for about 18 years, but that's our family business. And one time there was a very heated fight over one of the projects that we were proposing. And it was really tough. I mean, the people who were trying to stop it were angry, they were emotional. And there was one woman in particular who looked, and I give this story because I think you're maybe experiencing, right, when you're here on campus and people have different views, right? She was really, really upset, almost looking like she was making herself sick. And my father leaned over to her and he said, you know, her nickname was Red. I don't remember her. She had red hair. He said, you know, Red, just because we disagree doesn't mean we can't still be friends. And I looked at him and I was like, what are you, out of your mind? These people hate us. But I think it is really important to remember that we can separate out our disagreements and still find the humanity in one another. And we maybe can't do that every time, but if we can try, if we can remember that we should always try to do that, I think that's a helpful tool.
Yeah.
Great.
I agree.
Oh, fantastic.
It's hard, and I agree.
It's a essential. Yeah.
So another question from our audience, and it's related, but maybe you have more to add. What is your advice for young women interested in a future career in politics?
Advice.
Best piece of advice.
Persistence, it's one word, that's all. Keep going.
Keep going.
Don't give up. Don't let people are going to make you feel bad. You're going to say something stupid. You know, you're going to say the wrong thing to the wrong. It's hard. You're under a microscope all the time. Just close the chapter on yesterday and just don't think about the mistakes. There's just too much ahead of you. Just keep going and going and going. And always make sure that at the center of it, you never lose track of your why, whatever that is.
You just pulled that out of my brain. Right. And you have to figure out what your why is.
Yeah.
I will encounter young women who says, I want to run for public office. Okay, what level of government? Oh, it doesn't matter. Au contraire, yes, it does. It does matter. Holly Mitchell will never run for city council. Ever. Because the policy areas that city councils focus on don't feed me. That's not what I'm interested in. Yes, I want someone to pick up my trash and trim my trees. Those are important services. That's not the policy work that feeds me. So when you say I want to run for everything, it makes me look at you sideways. Because I don't know that you've tapped deeply into your why. So you have to figure out your why. What calls you to this work? Because it is harder than we make it look.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because when the people are protesting out in front of your house, when they show up at your door at 9 o'clock at night on a Friday with misinformation, when you lose all sense of privacy, when your salary is capped, private sector, you do well, you earn more. When your salary is capped, I got 100 bills signed into law when I was in the legislature over 10 years. My colleagues that got 3, we earn the same amount. As chair of the Senate Budget Committee, hours I put in, my colleagues that chaired nothing, we earn the same amount. So you have to have a calling. I believe public service is a calling. For you to be able to pour into your work and give it your all, which is what the people who elect you deserve. So I need you to be clear about your why and then stick to it.
Absolutely. So ditto and ditto again, but 3 things. Really know why you want to serve, and the why is really, really important. Second, position is not power. And third, be sure that you stay value-centered. And you know, I look at, and I've worked for a lot of elected officials, and those 3 things have always come into play. And the most effective ones, I think, have always been about serving for the right reasons, but also understanding that they can be in the highest position, but unless you really get the work done, deliver, make a difference, it really doesn't matter a whole lot. And to really have a basis from which you're doing this work, which is the Value Center. And I am going to just raise one thing, because I never thought I would run for office. This was not a teenage dream of mine, believe me. I remember when I first ran for office, there was a member of my kitchen cabinet, actually you all know him, a former mayor of Sacramento, Phil Eisenberg. And he gave me a homework assignment, which was, Betty, you always try to be the smartest one in the room, but you don't have to be the smartest one in the room. You have to figure out how you're going to connect with people. And so he actually gave me a writing assignment. You know, write a 2-page bio about yourself that is not a resume or a CV. Like, what is the essence of Betty? Who's the essence of Betty?
Wow.
And that's where you really get in touch with your values, about just, what has shaped your life? What are the things that you carry with you that continue to inform how you act and do what you do? And I have to say that's been one of the greatest guides of just my service over the years. So.
Wow.
And so as one who never thought she was the smartest one in the room, but what I did know was I was the biggest hustler in the room. And nobody was going to outwork me,
Right.
be more strategic than me to get it done. So whether you're the smartest one in the room or the biggest hustler, there's space for you in public office.
I just wanted to be in the room. I just kept showing up.
It begs the question of, for women leaders, it's how do you get it done with all the other obligations we have, as mothers, as daughters, as friends, as sort of spouses, there's a unique sort of set of circumstances in which, public servants and female public servants have to lead. Is there a secret?
So I'm going to tell you my dream about seeing more women in office, and that is we're going to change the rules of the game.
Huh.
I mean, we don't have to serve under the old rules. I mean, frankly, if you're a parent, if you're a mother, I mean, what's wrong with bringing your kids to work? What's wrong with being sure that we are creating a space of where women who are raising children can also share in the space of serving an elected office? It just adds to, I think, the rich experiences that help inform the work that we do. And so I do think there is, and I'm seeing it start to change because all of us, I think, are bringing those experiences in. I'm a part-time caregiver for my 99-year-old mother. COVID was a blessing because I could be with her and work remotely. But it shouldn't take a pandemic for me to be able to do that. And for most people, frankly, they can't work because this is what they have to do. And so those are the things that really help inform, I think, the policies that women can really lead that I think can help build a much more inclusive and strong economy for all of us.
Yeah.
I'm a single adoptive parent, and I only share that. It is his story to tell, but I only share that because it's important to understand that I didn't have a former partner, baby daddy, somebody to help me when I made this transition. And so my group, we called them the shoe closet for obvious reasons, sat down when I got mad at that budget hearing. I said, okay, I'm thinking this, but how can I do it? Ryan is 8. I'm in LA, Sacramento. How do we do that? And my problem was my model. My model was our former boss, Diane Watson, who didn't create a sense of balance for herself.
Right.
It was all the work. So that was my model. And I was like, well, I can't do it that way. So we looked nationwide for a model. We called everybody. Emily's List, NWPC. I'm looking for a single woman with a school-aged child, working class, and they all said, no example. Wow. At this time, 2008, they couldn't point me to someone. I got mad again and said, this is like designed to keep me out. And when I figured that out, I got mad enough to say, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to have to figure out how to do it my way.
That's right.
So I didn't do the evening receptions. And people said, oh, that's where the deals are cut. And then I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think the deals are cut.
Right.
I think there's a lot of alcohol consumption at the evening receptions, but I don't know that's where all the deals are cut. I didn't do the evening receptions. I had to figure out, his first year when I won, he was in 5th grade. I said, okay, I'm not going to pull you out of your school to bring you to Sacramento.
Yeah.
So I went back and forth every day.
Oh my gosh. So,
4 year, to allow him to culminate with his 5th grade class. Wow. I own a duplex. My mother was next door. I hired someone to pick him up from school, bring him home, do homework help. It was not pretty. It was not pretty. Then I brought him to Sacramento. I had to figure out a way that I could get it done.
Yeah.
And we were having a conversation about, I was learning that the legislators are finding it difficult to find staff, and somebody was sharing a story about a female staffer who was finding it difficult to be a mother working for a legislator. And I think because of my own juggling act, because it's not a balance, don't ever let anybody think you balance, it's a juggle. And your goal is to never let a ball hit the ground. You just have to reach down and get it. So in that 10 years, he went, from 8 to 18, lost my mother, became a part-time caregiver in that time. But that's ordinary life experiences. The women I represent in the district are going through the very same thing. And so that helped me be a better boss, a better leader of my own team, and I think just more compassion and understanding about what every working woman is experiencing. When the principal called because he was cutting up in algebra, I put a pause on budget committee and drove over to the school and sat in the back of the room, and he walked in. Oh, I thought don't you have budget committee today? I will show up anywhere, anytime. Don't get it twisted, because I'm a mother, right?
Yeah.
So I just give those, pathetic examples of me trying to figure it out, just to show you that no, there is no secret. That like every working family member, you just have to figure it out. And it's not pretty, it's not always for prime time, but you work it out.
So I've had this idea that when you have kids, you have to come up with your own formula. And so if you live near family, in-laws, parents who can help, that can make or
Absolutely.
break what you do. Partner, the job your partner has, make or break what you do.
That's right.
When I was serving in Hungary, my boys were in elementary school, and one of the things that happens when you get to post is everybody in the country wants to take the American ambassador out to dinner. And like you, I had the confidence to say, lunch.
Right.
I said, tell them I will have lunch, and we could schedule lunch right away, but it will take longer to find a dinner date. Why?
Right.
Because I wasn't going to have dinner with them.
Right.
Because I was going to try to be home with my kids. Now, even doing that, I was still out to dinner twice a week.
Sure.
Right?
Wow.
And we had a lot of people in the house, and we just made it work.
Right.
But what I will say about that, and let me also, I have got to give a shout out to my husband, because he was all in the partnership. And we have traded off. We've been married 23 years. Our boys are in college now. And we sort of traded off when his work life ramped up or my work. And he does not have any, like, that no one can make him feel bad about being the one who was responsible for getting the kids to the doctors if they got sick, and not me, right? So, I mean, he was proud of being the dad and doing all those things, and, But what I have found and seen in other countries is that, in fact, every single woman doesn't have to figure it out for herself.
Exactly.
In fact, there are systems within government around childcare
Exactly.
that make it a little more formulaic,
Right.
which allows for more women to be able to navigate being in the workplace. And let's face it, certainly in California, where the cost of living is so high, it isn't a choice anyway.
Right.
So to Betty's point about being at home with her mother, who that's just remarkable. She's 99 years old, and you said she's starting to show her age a little bit.
I still want to be like her when I grow up.
Good genes,
Yeah,
Betty.
right. That's right.
But the fact of the matter is that this extraordinary transformation in the way we work as a result of remote work, and as a result of what we learned during the pandemic about how productive we can actually be from a home office, when your kids are playing and where you take your 15-minute break to go make them a sandwich, right? It's a game changer.
It is.
And what we're also seeing is that employees are demanding of their employers.
Absolutely.
I'm in for a 4-day work week.
Yes.
I'm in for remote work. I have a young, we're 6 kids and I have 4 sisters, and my very, very youngest sister is a working mom. And she's just gonna find a work from home job because they exist now.
They do.
And she couldn't have known it before she had her baby, but now she has her baby, she's like, yeah, I kind of want to be around for a little while,
Yes.
right? So options have always been good for women. Options allow more women to rise up. And the more women who are rising up, just to put it a full circle, the better for our economy, the better for governments, the better for our kids, the better for our society. And it's, I think, going to be really interesting to see how this goes over the next couple of years. Because we know a lot of women pulled out of the workforce
Yes.
during COVID. So is now options for remote work actually going to help bring more women back in, but not just to any jobs, to the jobs that still will allow them to get up to the top when the kids do go to college. Though I'm still breathing down the neck of my boys.
Well, this has been a lovely afternoon. I think, really important takeaways. While there are challenges, there are many, many bright spots, many opportunities for women to lead the way by changing the rules, learning to hustle, and sort of being the sort of calling to rise up as we move forward in this unique multiracial democracy that is California. And so please join me in thanking our panelists. We have many co-sponsors. Thank you very much. But I want a special shout out to Christine Trost in the back, my GS. Ezra Bristow, who's there with the camera. Luca Marks. Our students, Nancy Kim and Giovanna Cornejo. All of our students in the audience. Our National Advisory Council, all our members, thank you so much. And thank you so much to our panelists. We have a light reception outside. You're welcome to hang out and stay with us here today. Thank you.
Thank you.